My goal with this book was to take some of those really complicated theories and ideas, modern day science and physics, and boil it down into something that actually affects our lives so that we can understand it in a very commonplace way and how it affects the way we go about the very little things in our lives, as well as the deep, profound spiritual things. So I filled it up with activities and all kinds of ways that we can practice and experience the magic ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's just everything from, like, noticing your dreams and red light, green light. You have all these, like, well, red light, green light sounds fun too because it reminds you of being a kid, and red
Right.
light, green light. I know that's not what you meant there, but it's
But I
there's
love
all
that.
these
It's
fun
just like
things.
that.
It is
It-
just like that.
yeah.
There were all these, like, really fun things in here, and it's not because wait, what did I write down? Because I didn't wanna forget what I was like, "Oh, esoteric." I was like, "Is this esoteric or for brainiacs?" And I was like, "No, it isn't. This is like it's your answers are within, and you've been doing this for 20 years at least." I mean, it seems like, yeah, right?
Yeah, it's been a real windy journey. My first book came out in 2004. And then I also got into the arts and culture and technology. And at that time in my day job, but all my worlds kind of came together through that pathway when I started working with people in tech and leadership and business who were so interested in intuition. And suddenly I started
Okay,
to,
so wait, why were they
yeah,
working with you? How did you get into like, how did intuition become your
yeah,
field? Because that's an interesting
yeah,
I
it's
wanna hear. We
okay.
wanna hear.
I'll tell you because it's crazy, and I never would have imagined that was gonna be my pathway. Like another lesson, you follow your intuition, it takes you where you need to be because you can never plan these things out rationally,
Yeah,
right? So
totally.
I was an artist. One of the very natural expressions of intuition are arts and creativity, and so I was naturally very creative. So I got into the arts and eventually became a graphic designer, and then eventually started to work for a tech council, and then eventually started to work in the creative industries, and then I started working with creative technology companies. So then we start getting into companies like Facebook, gaming companies, all these innovation companies, design companies, and talking with these really smart people with PhDs who are like just blowing the like innovation out of the water on a global scale, start talking to me about intuition and how it's become so important when you're creating business and building new products and getting into this space where you're leading the way. Because with what our intuition does is it teaches us to follow ourselves, that inner wisdom, that inner light, instead of going out there and following the world, copying other people, taking other people's path. So it really is the heart of ingenuity and inspiration and all these new things. So intuition really became on so many levels the holy grail. And I think that applies not only to our spirituality and our personal growth, but everything that we actually do in the world. People like Einstein, Steve Jobs, biggest advocates of intuition, let alone the mystics and all of the saints and psychics in history. Like all these extraordinary people realized how powerful intuition was. And that sort of set me on the path to write Radical Intuition. And then ultimately this book that we're dealing with today, the Illumination Code, where we talk about how it all works and how it's actually possible.
Yeah, so, okay, let's get into it. How does it work, and how does somebody listening they a question I ask a lot of times is people know I'm not doing what I'm meant to do, what I'm called here to do, and maybe they're unsure what it is, or they're afraid to take that leap. Those are the 2 things usually, and they're grabbing all these shining objects, or they're buying all these courses online, they're half finished or this or that, and it's not the answer, and so I'm gonna let you take it from there.
Well, I mean, you just said it. I mean, our true guru is within us. Our intuition is our true teacher, and that's the teacher we've all been looking for. And no matter what books we're reading or courses we're taking or whatever path we're going for, we're ultimately looking for that true inner teacher that other people can guide us to. And talking about, you really hit the nail on the head with this idea of the core motivation behind a lot of us is understanding our purpose and our path and why are we here? What are we doing here? What are we meant to bring into this world by existing? And our intuition holds the keys to that answer because it is the part of us that knows everything. It's the deeper part of ourself, the higher part of ourself that has access to all the information and wisdom in the world and really guides us from that subtle place of knowing and feeling and peace and power. With the Illumination Code, what I set out to do after I wrote my last book, Radical Intuition, people started to experience these magical things. So when you tune into your intuition, like the magic happens. You reach
Yeah.
out to the universe, comes out, there's synchronicity, signs, coincidences, things you shouldn't be able to know. And you start to realize that, whoa, something is really happening here. This is not just, it's not just something that we're imagining. There's something very real happening. So people kept coming to me. I'm like, how does it actually work? Like, how is it possible that I could know something that my partner's going to say right before it comes out of their mouth? Or how is it possible that I'm thinking of my friend right before they call me on the phone? Or the millions of different ways that this sort of our interconnection with life can manifest. And so I came across the work of Dr. Irvin Laszlo and his book, Science in the Akashic Field, a while back. And it really changed the way that I understood reality and really filled in a lot of the gaps with intuition.
And okay, so here you get to this download, then how do you trust it? How does somebody who's not sure because they're used to listening to somebody else or they're worried what people will think
Uh huh.
kind of thing?
Yes, and that's the big thing is making that shift from learning to trust yourself and follow yourself versus listening to your conditioning and what everybody else is doing and what everybody else thinks. And that's a big tension for a lot of us as we go through life. So the more we start to trust ourselves and the more that our intuition starts to come through for us, and then the more we're going to be able to trust ourselves in the future. So to get started and to break the sort of cycle of self-doubt, we really have to start taking some chances and taking some risks with our intuition and trusting ourselves. And in Radical Intuition, my last book, I have a whole big list of differences between intuition and the other voices in our head so that we can start to say, yeah, okay, this is definitely my intuition, right? So the Radical Intuition is all about teaching you to recognize your intuition and so you can start to trust it, right? Because the first thing you have to do is know, yes, I'm actually following my intuition. I'm not like going down some crazy path, right? And just you have to this is real. And then so the once it starts to come through for you and you feel what intuition feels like, it gets easier to trust it because you can recognize how it feels as opposed to your small self, your critical self, the voice of other people that's baked into your minds, right? So there's a lot of voices in our head. We have to tune in to that one true voice, which is our intuition.
Okay. And in the illumination code, you go through the 7 keys to unlock your quantum intelligence. Now, is it important to go through them in order? Because I didn't. I'm going to tell you right now, there were certain things I felt way more called to, and I went straight to the more woo stuff, so to speak, that I think is was way cooler. Number 6, I have to find it. I remember number 6 was very cool to me. I had it was impossible things, of course. I went straight to impossible things.
That's a good one.
'Cause
I don't blame
yeah,
you.
yeah. I was like, yeah, that one caught me. I was like, okay, I want to read that one first. I mean, Mind Matrix is cool, but I want impossible things first. So that was what I wanted to read first. I went to that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you want
So you can do it in any order, right? So there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with using your
yeah,
intuition. I'm always a fan of using your intuition. If you're called to go to that place first, by all means do that. I set it up in the order that I did to kind of explain things one by one so that you understand how everything works. So some of the things in the impossible things section, you might want to go back now and
yeah.
read like so the mind matrix is about the akashic field and how all of that information is actually stored. So then you can so it doesn't matter how you do it, the information's all there in the book as long as you're getting out of what your intuition wants you to get out of
Yeah, because it's very fun, you guys. Definitely very fun. And do you want to explain the Akashic Records and how it's accessible to all of us? You don't need somebody else to read your field because I
yeah.
think that is just always very fun. That you
Yes.
don't need an expert, you don't need a coach, you don't need someone else,
Yes,
and
and
how
I
it works.
really love this modern day idea of the Akashic records. This idea was really reinforced by Irvin Laszlo in the book I was talking about with his concept of the unified field, which I've always said for years when I was doing this work is that the Akashic records aren't an actual library, right? So the old school and like spiritualism is like you go into the hall of records and you open the books and but it's really just that sort of idea of the Akashic records was levitated back during a time before we understood what computers were or even quantum at all. So they didn't have an idea of the things that we understand now, like having a hard drive or like having cloud storage. Those kind of metaphors weren't in our repertoire. The closest thing you could get to back then was a book. So it became an Akashic record in a book. But it's not about books, it's about storage of information. And really, if you look at all of the universe, there's not any such thing as time now. We understand that's a relative concept. And so the Akashic record is really just the storage, the memory of the universe where everything that's ever happened will happen, is happening right now. All of that information is stored. And it's stored in this field around us called the non local field, the unified field, the intuition field, the quantum field. There's so many different words for it. but it's basically this field of information and wisdom that our intuition has access to. And every single person is hardwired into it because we're part of it. So it really is this beautiful connective energy that we can all tap into to better understand ourselves and to understand this magical universe that we live in.